In episode 12, the story begins in the Black Pyramid's tomb chamber. Here you see Mumm-ra talking to Nemesis to come up with a plan to get rid of the Thundercats, and then asked how it must be done. So Mumm-ra was asking Nemesis what kind of power that would do to such a job. Well, according to Nemesis, he was more than happy to answer that because he said that Tashi, who was trapped in a time warp prison at the time, we're about to meet her in a minute, she has the power known as the Doomgaze that would do to such a job. So Mumm-ra was more than happy to summon her, and so that's what he did. So there's Tashi, the one that Nemesis had told Mumm-ra about that was trapped in the Time Warp prison at the time. So after Mumm-ra had summoned her, she wanted to know what kind of favor he wants from her. Well, according to Mumm-ra, what he told her is that he needs the secret from the power of the Doomgaze from her to finish off the Thundercats. And he needs it right this minute. Well, Tashi says that there's only one problem. She's trapped in the Time Warp prison. So, after learning about it, that's when Mama told her that he can free her from it. But Tashi has her turn to plead her case to say that's impossible, and then she says that only she has the key to set herself free, but there's a problem. She's absolutely powerless to do anything about it. Well, Mumm-ra has his turn to plead his case to say, on the contrary, I know the key to set you free. So, when Tashi wanted to know what is the key of setting her free, well, Mumm-ra was more than happy to answer that. So, when he said that it's the tuft of the cheetah's hair, but then Tashi wanted to know, that's not all, isn't it? Well, apparently not in Mumm-ra's case, so he told Tashi that the tear of a Robert Burble and a tuft of hair from a cheetah ought to do it. But Tashi dismisses it and said that that's still not enough. So Mumm-ra finally told Tashi that there are three ingredients that would set her free. The tear of a Robert Burble, the unicorn shoe, and a tuft of hair from the cheetah. But according to Tashi, there's still one element left. So he suggested, Mumm-ra that is, to have a hero take her place. So finally Tashi agrees. So meanwhile, outside of Cat's Lair, we have Snarf, Panthro, and Lino that were busy training. But then something distracts Lino. It's a strange cloud that's coming up from out of nowhere, and they found it really, really weird. So they rushed to see what was going on. So, what makes it even weirder is that there's no ordinary cloud and it's heading in the opposite direction. So, to investigate, Lionel knows what to do. He uses his sword to look through the sword's eye to tell him what's going on, and so he did. And when what Lionel saw was unbelievable, a jellyfish that's hidden inside the cloud and is heading towards the Burble village. So after looking through the sword's eye, Lionel and Panther knew that there is no time to lose, so they rushed over to the Burble village. So meanwhile at the Burble village, something or someone has already gotten there first, and it just kidnapped Bell. So by the time that the Thundercats arrived, Panther, Lionel, Snarf, and Chitara, that's when Bill, the leader of the Burbles, just told them the bad news. Snarf, meanwhile, tries to stop the jellyfish from taking Bell away, but unfortunately he failed miserably. But aha, Chitara says that she has a plan. She's going to leave a trail so that the Thundercats can follow her. So that's what she did. So she ran off. So back with Chitara, who was busy running, she was busy leaving marks so that the Thundercats can follow her. Then she arrives at Unicorn Forest until something stopped her, and it's a net. So back with Chitara, long story short, who was caught in the net, she saw Sly, the leader of the mutants. She says, I should have known you were behind all of this. And all he did was to take a tuft of Chitara's hair with a hatchet. And so he did. So after that, when Chitara tries to catch Sly, but she was unsuccessful, that's because he got it right from the same jellyfish that Lionel saw earlier. But Sly's not alone because also there was Bell asking her to rescue her. She says, help, help. And so after that, the jellyfish left. So back with Lionel and Snarf, they were trying to run to catch up to Chitara. Meanwhile, in Unicorn Forest, something or someone had tied up the unicorn's feet. And we know who that someone is, none other than Jackalman of the mutants. So when Jackalman comes up out of nowhere and all he wanted was the unicorn's shoe. So back with Lionel and Snarf after they arrived at Unicorn Forest, they saw what Jackalman was doing and with the unicorn shoe. Back with Jackalman, after he found out what is going on, he ran off. So back with the unicorn after he was set free by Lionel, that's when he ran off. Now Lionel and Snarf found this really weird. What would Jackalman be doing with the unicorn's shoe? Who took Rubber Bill? And when Chitara shows up, now she wants to know what would Slide, the leader of the mutants, be doing with Chitara's hair. Now this is really weird. So when Lionel asked Chitara what had happened, she was more than happy to explain. She says that earlier she ran into a net that was set by Slide, the leader of the mutants, and all he wanted was the tuft of her hair. But what for? So after Snarf had pleaded his case to say this is really strange, but that's not all, Chitara says. What's strange about it is that Slide had escaped by that main cloud. That's the same cloud that Lionel saw in his sword. So you know what this means. That means, as always, Lionel has a hunch that it was all part of Mumm-ra's plan. And why is that? Because he wanted to set Tashi free from the Time War prison. That's why he needed those three items and to do it with. So to find that out, as always, Lionel does what any good guy would do. Look through the Sword's eye to tell him what happened. So that's what he did. So through the Sword's eye, what he saw was Mount Anguish. Mumm-ra is there all right, but he's not alone because the mutants are there with him. So just like what Mumm-ra did at the pyramid, he summons Tashi. And so her boat appears right in the middle of the sky. Robert Bell, who is also there, she's still held prisoner. Things are looking bad for her. So she says, Thundercats, please help me. Hurry. And so, after what Lionel saw was unbelievable, he now knows what to do. He has to stop him and the mutants. So Lionel says, listen to me, Chitara. We could cover more ground if we split up. You take the Phosphorus Desert. Meanwhile, Snarf and I will take the Cliffs of Vertigo, and we'll meet at Mount Anguish. So after that, both Chitara and Lionel and Snarf head off. So back with Chitara, she was running through the Phosphorus Desert just the way it's planned. Back with Lionel and Snarf, they had arrived at the Cliffs of Vertigo. That's when Snarf told Lionel, I wish there was some other way. But then Snarf lost his balance for a while, but luckily for Lionel, he manages to save him when he did. So long story short, after that close call with Lionel and Snarf, meanwhile on Mount Anguish, there's Mumm-ra, and along with the mutants, they're preparing a ritual for Tashi when she gets set free. The first to arrive was Chitara, and the next two to arrive were Lionel and Snarf. So back with Tashi, who just heard the good news from Mumm-ra that he had completed what he was supposed to do. So now all he has to do was bring the three elements to her. The cheetah's hair, the Burbol's tear, and the unicorn's shoe. So as the ritual happened, that's when Snarf pleaded his case with Lionel to say he didn't like it at least a bit. So long story short, back with Tashi, she had just levitated herself from her boat down to Mumm-ra and the mutants. Watching it happen were Lionel and Snarf. When Snarf wanted to know from Lionel, who is that? Although Lionel said that he isn't sure, but she is kind of beautiful in a bad sort of way. No joke intended, of course. So long story short, Mumm-ra just told Tashi, now we can let the sorcery begin. So as always, Mumm-ra does what he knows best, transform himself from his mummified form to his monstrous form. So that's what he did. So back with Tashi, she told Mumm-ra, set me free from this Touring War prison. And if you do, I'll share the power of the Doomgaze with you, she said. So back with Mumm-ra, after he uses his powers, the first thing he did was to use it on Chitara's hair. Next is the unicorn's shoe. Still watching it happen were the Thundercats. Last but not least, all Mumm-ra needs is the tear of the Robert Burble, meaning Robert Bell. But Robert Bell refuses to cry for him, or give up the tear, so to speak. Back with Lionel, when Star tried to get Lionel's attention, he was too busy staring at Tashi. So long story short, back with Mumm-ra, now that he had the Birdball's tear, back with Snarf, he tries to snap Lionel out of it and says, "We gotta get her out of here." So once again, Lionel was pleaded by Snarf to say, "Snap out of it! What's going on with you? Pull yourself together," he said. But he continues to stare at Tashi. So long story short, back with Chitara, after she saw what was going on, it's now up to her to take matters into her own hands by saying, "If Lionel won't do anything about it, then I will." So guess what she did? The first thing she did was that she stuck up behind Monkey and covered his mouth. So long story short, back with Tashi, when she asked Momo a question, where's the hero that was supposed to be taking her place? So when Lionel finally shows up in front of Momo and Tashi, that's when they turn around and look at him, and that's when Momo pleaded his case to say, "There's the hero." Well, Lionel knows what to do before he prepares for a battle, call for his friends. On where else his sword to project the Thundercat signal, just like what any good guy would do. So he did. So back at Cat's Lair, the rest of the Thundercats, Panthro, Tigra, and the Thunderkins that saw the signal, the Thunder Tank is now on their way to Mount Anguish. So meanwhile, back on Mount Anguish, Jitara goes one-on-one with Monkey and other mutants by tying him up with his own weapon. After she lifts him up for a while on top of the stone hinge, she says, "That'll teach you." Down below, Lionel goes one-on-one with Mumm-ra, but before he did, he looks at Slide, the leader of the mutants. So Slide the leader of the mutants told Lionel to stay back. That's when Cheetar comes out of nowhere and knocked him over. That made Slide fall on his back. So Cheetar says, "Why don't you take care of Mumm-ra? I got a score to settle with Slide," she suggested. But Slide panicked and then ran off. And then Cheetar runs to catch up with him. So back with Lionel, who's face to face with Mumm-ra and Tashi. But before Lionel can go into battle, that's when Mumm-ra looks at Tashi and then told her to use her Doomgaze on him so that he could be trapped in the Time Warp prison forever. That was what he said in his case. So back with Tashi, she did just like what Mumm-ra said, used the Doomgaze on Lionel. So back with the Thunder Tank, now that the four of the Thundercats know that Lionel's in trouble because the Thundercat signal disappeared. They had to do something about it. Well, Tiger suggested that the shortcuts through the field of daggers. So after hearing that suggestion, that's when Panther said that we'll have to chance it anyway. So that's what the Thunder Tank did. So the Thunder Tank was going to go through the field of daggers. But unfortunately for the Thundercats and the Thunder Tank, things didn't go the way as planned, so they're probably hung up for a while. Back on Mount Anguish and with Lionel, things are looking bad for him. So Mumm-ra pleaded his case with Lionel to say now that he's got him and that he'll be trapped in the Doomgaze and he and Tashi will rule Third Earth and etc. So long story short, back with Snarf, he decided to do something about it and then pleaded his case to say at least you still got me. Well, Tashi soon dismissed him and said in that case you can join your companion hero. And so she uses the Doomgaze on Snarf just like she did with Lionel. Meanwhile, Jackalman of the Mutants just saw Slide, the leader of the Mutants, got all tied up thanks to Chitara. So after Jackalman runs off, back with Chitara, now that she's left Slide, the leader of the Mutants, all tied up, she ran up to Jackalman. So Chitara, while face to face with Jackalman, she pleads her case to say, "This is me and you now," and etc. So she goes one-on-one with Jackalman. But then he got frightened and then ran off. So back with Chitara, after she found out what Mumm-ra did to Lino, that's when Mumm-ra told her to give it up and there was nothing she could do about it. On the contrary, that doesn't mean that Tashi should do anything about it. She uses her Doomgaze on Chitara, but it didn't work, and that's when Chitara let slip to Tashi to say that the Doomgaze may work on men, but she's a woman, and it will never work. But then both Tashi and Mama just heard a thunder tank heading their way. I guess it made it out of the field of daggers. I cannot say for sure. So now that it eventually did, that's when all four Thundercats had sprung into action. So as for Tashi, she screams and said, "No, impossible! I want to be free." Well, luckily for Chitara, she took the cloak off of Lionel, snapping him out of the gaze, and just in the nick of time, too. So after the Thundercats had dodged every power that Mumm-ra used, that's when he realizes that he ran out of power. And that's because Mumm-ra had only enough to transform himself. So he pleaded his case before leaving towards his pyramid to tell the Thundercats, "You will pay for what you did," he said. And the last thing he says that, "You will see, I'll have my revenge." So he disappeared, and along with Tashi, who is now defeated. So back with the Thundercats now that they've won, once again, of course, that's when Chitara went first to say that she's got worried back there. So Lionel apologized to everyone for letting them down, and especially Bell. He said that he had no idea what's going on with him and what came over him. Well, to make Lionel feel better, that's when Bell says, "Don't blame yourself. We all have our weaknesses." Then Lionel says, "Well, even Snarf tried his best," but then he said, "Wait a minute. What did happen to Snarf?" Then the Thundercats ran over to Snarf, who unfortunately is still trapped in the Doomgaze at the moment. So Chitara asked, "How will we free him?" Then looks at Panthro and he says, "Technology is my specialty, not sorcery," he said. Then Wily Kid says, "Wait a minute, there's something over there. That's the same chalice that Mumm-ra used, and she found it on the ground." Then she says to herself, "I wonder if this would work." Now remember, that's the same Burbles tear that Mumm-ra used. So Wily Kid figures, why not give it to Snarf? So she did. And finally Snarf woke up. Oh, he snapped out of the Doomgaze all right, just minutes too late, because Bell has already been rescued, but he was unaware of it. Well, better late than never. So that ends episode 12.